So guess what? We have to start with a correction. The book is not named Exodus. Did you guys know that? It's not called that. It's not called the Exodus until the book of Hebrews. That's the first point in history where, well, it's probably not the first point in history, but that's where it's recorded as the Exodus, is Greek word talking about a mass migration, right? Picking up everybody and going. In Hebrew, the word it's called Shemot because it means names, and the Hebrew Bible names the books after the first significant word of the book. So this names is Shemot. Um, so when people talk about having a second Exodus, you really didn't actually have a first one, right? Right? It's not a thing, right? Yeah, right. Oh, there's parallels, right? Um, so when we use the phrase Exodus, we're talking about everything that happens in this book. My view of it is this is one of the most holiest, incredible things to have ever happened. Okay. And so I kind of have the Jewish perspective of that. But it's not the end. This was a great thing. Other great things have happened. And in the end, our next stop in prophecy is something that is going to make us forget this. Something is coming so big and so huge that the book of Jeremiah says, no more will they talk about, these miracles. Doesn't mean we're not going to talk about the miracles. It just means that something is coming that's bigger than having 2 million, having 70 people go into Egypt and 2 million people come out miraculously. Um, so I'm not a fan of the phrase second Exodus. It was brought on by a person who wanted to merge the rapture into our thought processes. And there's some significant problems with talking about a second Exodus. The first biggest problem that comes to my mind is that the generation that marched out of Egypt didn't make it to the promised land. Okay, so do we want that to happen again? No, we do not, because we're the generation that's coming out of Babylon, and we want to actually make it across Jordan. Um, and so the plan of salvation, I know people say that Hebrew is cyclic. It is cyclic, but the circles get bigger and they move on a line towards something. So we have the creation, we have the fall, then we have the flood, we have the restoration, then we have this, the famine, making Joseph the prince of Egypt. Then we have 70 in, 2 million out. Then we have the nation established, and we have rise and fall. So this is all pointing towards something that's not where this cycle is going to end. And it is interesting that when people use the phrase second Exodus, they're thinking of themselves as Moses, Aaron, Miriam, not realizing those people didn't make it, right? They didn't make it into the kingdom, right? Only two, Caleb and Joshua, right? Yep. So with that, and there's another thing where they say that more than 70 went in. The Bible says 70 went in. So that's it, 70 to 2 million. It's hard when people do the math, right? Just commutations and permeations that people have kids and whatever. It's hard to come up with 2 million unless you include the mixed multitude, right? Then it's not so hard. Everett.
Yeah, Eleazar, the priest, of course, made it in as well, Aaron's
Yeah.
son, and
Okay.
and probably his younger brother. Of course, the Jewish tradition, or well, yeah, one of those Jewish books seems to indicate that the tribe of Levi is not really included in the curse that was came upon the evil generation, if you will. And so many in Levi may have made it. I don't, but that's just conjecture as far as I'm concerned. But it does make a certain amount of sense.
It does, because of the continuity and because of what I said last week. I don't know if you looked into it, but the fact that they really didn't do the holy days in the wilderness. So you kind of needed to have that first taught people in order to retain the knowledge of it. So it lists out the people who went in, and it talks about a new king over Egypt who didn't know Joseph. Okay, this here, we there's so much to talk about. And if you guys have stuff to talk about, because this is so studied and so many parallels and stuff, if you have stuff to talk about, feel free to hijack and go wherever you want to go. Okay. But I have, I was writing a note on every verse, right? Right. Think about how crazy it must be to be in Egypt, to be the king of Egypt, have it be this enormously powerful country, and not be taught the history of how that happened, right? How can Pharaoh not know that Joseph and those 14-year time span and the decisions that came, when you look around the kingdom and the storehouses and the economy that was created by that exists? Why are these people in Goshen that don't look like us? Right? Right? How can it say that he didn't know Joseph? That seems unfathomable to me, right? Scales on his eyes, right? But I mean, it would be like, um, like Americans not knowing why we live on this continent, right? Right? And it's about the same time frame too. Go ahead, Everett.
Yeah. Yeah, I would tend to think that he knew of Joseph, but he didn't appreciate the the fact that Joseph was supporting the country, not trying to tear it down.
Oh, that could be true too. The rewriting of history, because that's kind of where I was going with that. You see these man on the street interviews where people, the funny joke is, who's buried in Grant's tomb, right? People, I don't know. Well, because he gets a trick question. It's Grant, right? Grant's tomb, right? When was the War of 1812? And people are right. Those are jokes from the old days. But now today, if you ask somebody, can you name the three branches of government? Okay, look at you. What do you mean? Right? CNN, Fox, and NBC. Right? Right? They don't know. And so that's the first stop. And then how do you forget how the nation got wealthy? And moving on. There's a lot to talk about, so we don't need to read. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and the more they spread out. So what's happening is that the Hebrews are becoming so populous that they're going to overrun the natives, the native born. And they're not a fan of that, because for some miraculous reason, these people lived in the same place and didn't really intermarry that much. As we'll see later, that Moses knew he wasn't really Egyptian. So they had to have looked differently. We generally think of the Egyptians as the more darker skinned, but the Hebrews were not white by any stretch of the imagination. They were olive-skinned people, Middle Eastern type people, right? Yeah, they do. That would really put this one upside down now, wouldn't it? Right? Right? It'd be a little problematic. Tiffany said some say they're black, right? But the so they're enslaving them, and they're trying to get them to not have kids. But what is the net result of all this hard labor and all this oppression? Is it makes them tough and strong and fit so that they can take up this journey that's coming. So sometimes by your strength stripes we're healed, and sometimes we go through trials to make us stronger. This is a big illustration of that. Oh, it's a bit, it's a bit of time. No, it could have got fit in a shorter period of time. The Richard Simmons plan. Um, so the Egyptians compelled the sons of Israel to labor rigorously. They made their lives bitter with hard labor in mortar and bricks and all kinds of labor in the fields, reminiscent of our Passover. So, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives. One was named Sifra and the other was Puah. And he said, when you are helping the Hebrew women to give birth and see them upon the birth stool, if it's a son, you shall put him to death. If it's a daughter, she shall live. Now, we think of this as population control, but it's not exactly population control, is it? What is it? It's military control. It's military. They're killing the men because the men are the ones that can do the fighting, right? If it was population control, you would kill off the women because a woman can give birth to multiple, people, multiple children, right? So we could see what's happening in China when they had the one kid policy. Everybody wanted to have men. Now they have too many men and they don't have any women, right? So in this case, one guy could impregnate several women and you could continue to procreate that way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to hamstring them from having the war fighters and from being able to stand up for themselves. And so the midwives say, why do the boys live? Oh, well, they're fast. The Hebrew women are strong and they get vigorous and they give birth before the midwife can get to them. So Tiffany's lamenting that was not her case. So God was good to the midwives and the people multiplied. Now they're being rewarded by disobeying the orders of their king. So we do have the general rule in the New Testament where Paul says that we're supposed to observe the authorities, but not when the authorities are wicked and trying to commit genocide. Okay. So there are limitations to this. And so because they were good, they established households for them. Now, this gives us an idea that this took time. This wasn't a short, this wasn't a brief interlude where they become slaves, but this is something that's been established, but maybe over decades of time. Okay. And then Pharaoh said, every son who is born to you, you are to cast into the Nile, and every daughter you are to keep alive. Well, we're about to go to the next chapter. Did Moses's mom disobey? Did she disobey? She put him in the Nile. All right. She did put him in the Nile. Hey, Pharaoh, you didn't say anything about not giving him a floaty. Okay. Okay. So the man from the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. Moses was 100% house of Levi. Woman conceived, bore a son. When she saw he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. Well, that's kind of messed up. You think the ugly kids are put to death or what? And Moses' name is from drawing out of the water, right? What significant event do we have in the history of the universe where something is drawn out of the water? Baptism, says Tiffany. It's about the creation of the earth. The Spirit of God was floating over the waters, and Yahweh separated the waters from the waters to make dry land. Moses is drawn out of the water. There's serious parallels with this, right? The people of God, God's family, is drawn out of the water, like the earth was made from the water. No? Well, yeah, I should come up with something clever once in a while, right? So, When she could hide him no longer, she got him a wicker basket, covered it over with tar and pitch, and she put the child into it and set it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. And his sister stood at a distance to find out what would happen. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the Nile with her maidens walking alongside the Nile, and she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her maid, brought it to her. She opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the boy was crying. She had pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Why did she disobey daddy? He was a good looking boy. That's right. So his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women that she may nurse?" Now, does anybody find it intriguing that the Hebrew wife is within proximity of the daughter of Pharaoh and doesn't have any problem talking to her? I mean, seems a little bit on the you wouldn't walk up to the a daughter of a king or a prince or something and just be able to converse with them. So, but it happened. And Pharaoh's daughter, she says, "Shall I go and call it?" And she says, "Go ahead." The girl went and called the child's mother. So miraculously, the boy gets to live. He gets to be raised up as a prince of Egypt by his own mom. Very, very handy. I'm with you. How did Pharaoh let this happen? Right. Yeah. And right. That's it. Tiffany says, "You got this Hebrew kid. I thought we were supposed to get rid of those there, daughter of mine." Right? The jig should have been up. But it happened. So the child grew and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter and he became her son. She named him Moses because I drew him out of the water. Came about in those days when Moses had grown up that he went out to his brethren and looked on their hard labors, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew. So Moses was raised as an Egyptian, but he knew he wasn't. And so that's so curious that worked out. And he has a sense of justice. So he looked this way and that. When there was no one around, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. I suppose just saying, "Stop, don't do that," was out of the question, right? If he's in Pharaoh's house, he may not have authority, but there's some perceived authority, you know. So he went out the next day, and behold, two Hebrews were fighting with each other, and he said to the offender, "Why are you striking your companion?" But he said, "Who made you a prince or a judge over us?" You're about to find out, right? "Are you intending to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and said, "Surely the matter has become known." So Moses starts his life by, killing a guy, defending his people, right? Which, I guess is okay. Oh, there's Corky. The word teva, the basket, is only used twice in the Bible, here and in the ark Noah built. And now we have some more parallels about drawing him out of the water. Look at that. Nice one. Very nice. Yeah. So when Pharaoh heard of this matter, he tried to kill Moses. Could have taken that shot when he was in the crib, but he let it work its way out. And Moses fled from the presence of Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. And the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water. And filled the troughs to water their father's flock. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered the flock. Does this sound familiar? Like maybe we read this a couple chapters ago, right? When Moses is I banked on remembering. But yes, Rebecca and Isaac and right. And so when they go to the well, the well is watering the camels and all that. This is history kind of repeating itself and moving along. And then when they came to Reuel, their father, "Why have you come back so soon?" They said, "An Egyptian delivered us from the hand of the shepherds, and he even drew water for us and watered the flock." So Moses looks to them like an Egyptian. So this kind of goes back and forth. But isn't this like us too? Right? We're not really of the world, but we're in the world. Right? Right? We we wear our tzitzits so that people could identify us, if you know what that is. Most people don't even know, right? And so we're different, but you have to really get to know us to actually know that we're different sometimes, you know. Yeah. We have to wear the clothes that are sold in the store. I suppose I could put the tallit on and wear that to work every day, right? No. No. No, I'm not gonna do that. Um, and so I says, where is he then? Why is it that you have left the man behind? Invite him to have something to eat. This hospitality is the key. Back when we were talking about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Laban, this hospitality is one of the identifying traits of God's people. When the angels go into Sodom and Gomorrah, right? It's Lot invites them in, tries to protect them, right? Doesn't leave them outside to get beat on, right? So like if we were in the subway in New York City and saw somebody getting attacked, it's our duty to try to help them. Right? Most people would not help them, all right? And so Southern hospitality. So Moses was willing to dwell with the man, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses. Then he gave birth to a son and named him Gershom, for he said, I've been a sojourner in a foreign land. Okay, Reuel means, we go back to 18, means friend of God. He is the priest of Midian, and he's named friend of God. So is he a righteous priest or is he a pagan priest? Right, got to be a good guy, right? But this is allowing a blending here, right? Where Moses is starting to experience the culture of his people through this priest of Midian. But has anybody ever looked into? I don't think we have any more information about Reuel until he comes later to Moses when he's in the wilderness and says, "Bud, you can't do all this by yourself." But it's curious about Reuel being the priest of Midian that, you know, what is that? Because we got Melchizedek's the king of Salem, priest of Salem. We don't really know much about that guy either, you know. Uh, April April is saying that he might be a priest on Esau's side. So, but there's got to be some connection here. And oh yeah, I got to back up a little bit. Um, I'm going to make this point and back up. The Jewish way of ethnicity, because as we were talking, being critical of the Messianic Judaism, which believes that the line still exists, that if you're if you have the bloodline or you convert to Judaism, then you do the Passover. If you don't, you don't, right? We don't. We believe there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free. We believe in the adoption. But the determination of in Judaism for who is a Jew and who is not is being born of a Jewish mother or an Israelite mother. Gershom is not. Gershom is born of a Midianite daughter. So by that rule, Gershom, Ephraim, and Manasseh would not be considered Jewish. So they're wrong. Okay. Okay. That's where I'm going with that is if we use the scripture a lot to disprove Christianity's mistakes. We also do it to prove, Jewish mistakes as well. It's Moses had his African wife was his African wife. Joseph's Egyptian wife was his wife, and his kids were part of the family. But I did want to talk about the sand. When it goes back up, he struck him and hung him in the sand. This is an interesting map of North Africa. This doesn't include Egypt, because it's on the western side. But look at all these rivers. This is Libya. Uh, it's the Libyan coast, North Africa. Look at all these rivers and look at these bodies of water that existed at, this is somewhere around the 1500s. Africa was not, Africa turned into this sandy desert destruction thing not that long ago. And that's a pretty big mystery if you want to look at mysteries. There are maps, I couldn't find them last night, but there are maps from the 1400s that show rivers and inlets into where the desert of, where that Sudan desert is today. And there's that sailors drew. And so Egypt, when I looked into it, they think that Egypt turned into the sandy place that it is now about 5,000 years ago, which would make it the time when Moses was there. But these maps tell a different story, right? And so there's some people who are starting to talk about this, like, how could that have turned into that sandy desert? There's also, when you look at Ramses, which was the capital of Egypt when it was this big empire, there are a bunch of idols and statues there that were all destroyed and in a very quick fashion. And Israel and Egypt won't let you go there, right? So you could watch videos of these statues that look like they were bombed from the sky. I'm not talking about statues of like me. I'm talking about like the Sphinx type stuff. There are huge things that were busted up and blown up, and there's something more to this that meets the eye, because Goshen is a pasture land. It is a place where they grow cotton today, but it seemed like Egypt would have to have had a more agrarian terrain to support all of the people that lived there. Just thought I would bring that out. But this is not a made up map. This is from Getty Images. This is a real drawn map from sometime in the 1600s, and you could see all these rivers and tributaries going into a desert, desolate land, and doesn't really make a lot of sense, you know. Like this thing all the way in here, right? Right. I mean, I don't believe Ethiopia interior. So Ethiopia is on the other, today, Ethiopia is on the other side of Africa. It's not here. So this is just something to kind of ponder. Not that I was going anywhere with it, but that Moses buried him in the sand. And I just wonder what the climate was like for real in Egypt. Because if you there was something that they unearthed by one of the pyramids. They found a boat that was a boat, like one of their skiffs, that was entombed with a pharaoh, and pictures that boat used to have a river to go all the way up to their pyramid or to wherever the palace lived, and that's how they got around. But there's no there today. It's just all this, like a giant cat litter box. It does nothing yet. So, that was my little hijack thing there. 20, just like Laban. I did make a note on that. Zipporah. Zipporah's name. Anybody know what that means? It's a bird. She's a bird. And what does it say about how the Hebrews were delivered from Egypt on eagle's wings? Moses's mom is named Bird, and Moses delivered the Hebrews on eagle's wings. Right? These are things that, on our Friday night group, they're really big on the Septuagint. You don't get that out of Greek, right? The Hebrew names mean so much, and just one word, you can tell a whole whole story, and things start to make a little bit more sense. So in the case of many days that the king of Egypt died, and the sons of Israel sighed because of their bondage, and they cried out, and their cry for help because of their bondage rose up to God. So God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God saw the sons of Israel, and God took notice of them. Just want to say that it says what it says, but this did not take Yahweh by surprise. Okay. Okay. He set these things in motion, knowing that people have to be pushed to move. The analogy that I have on my notes in my brain is back in the 80s and 70s, we used to make a lot of cars in Detroit, and Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and we also used to make a lot of steel. And when those industries dried up because of, the changes in trade, a lot of people didn't leave. They didn't go anywhere, right? Today, we're talking about it in California and realizing that people have lost everything, and the opportunity is here for them to go somewhere, but they don't know anything else. They don't want to go anywhere else, right? Their friends, their family, their history is tied to a place. So Yahweh has to make their lives miserable so they think about leaving. And you think about if you've ever had a job where you were mistreated. You were really mistreated before you decided to go get another job. This is just the human condition that we really don't want to make large changes. When Diana and I moved out here from California, our families thought we were nuts, right? Because we were going out. We don't have any friends. We don't have any family. We're starting out on our own, kind of an American type thing. That's the American thing to do. But we're looking around California in 2000, year 99, 2000, and the cheapest house is bigger than my VA loan can cover. We have no future. It was an easy decision. We want to have, when I told her I moved to Kansas City, it was like a 2-minute phone call. I was in Boston at a meeting, and I called her and I said, "You want to move to Kansas City?" She had no idea where Kansas City was. Her reply was, "If you buy me a house, I don't care where we live." Done. 2 months later, we lived in the house. We live in the house we live now, right? That's hard for most people. Most people, not going, right? Right? It's scary. It's spooky. And so Yahweh makes these people's lives, I don't know who D is, but I'm going to let him in. So Yahweh makes these people's lives very, um, uh, harsh and makes them uncomfortable, and they want to leave, but they don't want to leave. So they do, but they don't, right? It's the same thing with us, Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb in the mountain of God. So these are clues. If Jethro, sorry, not Reuel, but Jethro, that these guys are like Esau, right? Because they're shepherds, right? And Egyptians aren't shepherds. So the angel of Yahweh appeared to him in a blazing fire from amidst of a bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So Moses is curious, right? How do you react to this? How do we react to this today? Out come the phones, right? Right? And Moses is curious. He's like, "Hey, never seen this before." So when Yahweh saw, he turned aside and he called to him and says, "Moses," he says, "Here I am." And he said, "Do not come near here, but remove your sandals from your feet, for the place in which you are standing is holy ground." So what happens, this is a horrible analogy, but when the Palestinian demons kidnapped the Israelis, do you know how they kept them from getting away? But taking off their shoes. They made them barefoot. When you're barefoot on ground, you're defenseless. So it's holy ground. We always think about the connection between the person and the ground, as that's why they're taking the shoes off. Could be that they're taking it off to show that whoever owns that ground is more powerful than you. And you're not there as an adversary, right? You're not there with your boots on. And so and he says, you're on holy ground. He says, I am the Elohim of your father, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, the Elohim of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God, look at Elohim. Good call. Yes, ma'am.
Also, holy ground, it's not holy unless Yahweh's there. So it's not holy without him present.
All right.
I mean, it wouldn't have been holy if he wasn't there. It'd have
Okay.
just been normal ground, but because
Right.
his presence is there, it's holy.
Yeah, you're in the presence of God. Yeah. So Yahweh said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt and have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters, for I'm aware of their suffering. I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians and to bring them up from the land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, and the Hivite, Jebusite. Behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me, but furthermore, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians are oppressing them. Therefore, come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. So, what does the Sabbath command include? Right? The Sabbath command tells us that, for you keep the Sabbath holy, 6 days, God made the heavens and the earth. You don't work your beast, you don't work anybody because you were slaves in Egypt. So the Torah has one law for everybody. If you're in the Torah, everybody gets a day off. Every animal gets a day off. Everything gets a day off. We expand that out with the holy days, where there's agricultural rests and all such a thing. But this is the opposite, the oppression of the society that we live in today, the 24/7, 365, always on the phone, always driving aggressive, always going, not the way Yahweh wants us to live. He wants us to have a break, and he wants everybody to have a break. And so Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and the sons of Israel and bring the sons of Israel out? Oh, I thought Corky said something else. No. And so it starts out with Moses being humble. Moses is the humblest person ever till Yeshua, right? And so this is good. And I want you to notice here in Genesis 3, in Genesis 3:6, he actually does say, I am. He does say a word, I am. Okay, Ani. He does not say the words I am when we get down here when he asks for the name. And we'll look at that in the Masoretic text in a minute. So there is a juxtaposition here. When the King James puts it as I am, it's trying to tell us an eternal being is talking, is speaking, right? Somebody without existence. So it doesn't actually say I am. That really does floor some people. But I am in Hebrew is Ani, A-N-I, and it's actually not down there, which we'll sit there in a second. Well, actually, I have in my notes to do that now. It's so touchy. And he says, I am, and Anki, it says Anki. I don't know why it says it like that. Anki, Ani Elohim, Abba, right? It says Ani right here, right? When we get down, this is verse 6. He says, I am the father of Abraham, right? So he does say that there. But when we get down to, which is it? Is it 13 or 4? It's 14. Then Elohim says to Moses, Haya asher haya, right? Means Haya asher haya is a play on the verb to be, which means self-existence one. I exist. I will be what I will be. I am that I am. But the word I am is not actually there. So when they switch to Greek, it calls it I am the being, right? Which is where the ego and me comes into it. I'm not really making a lot of sense. Everett, is your mic on? Nope. But yeah, so the difference here is that in English, this switches in our Bibles to I am is sending you. But it doesn't really say that. It says Haya Asher Haya, which is something that doesn't actually translate into English because it's talking about I exist.
Yeah,
Yes.
this version says, and Elohim said to Moshe, I am that which I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Except he doesn't actually say that. He says Haya Asher Haya. In all reality, it should not be translated. It should just say Haya Asher Haya. It is the holiest letters, because Yod He Vav He is an acronym based on Haya Asher Haya, right? So that's why the next verse says, but I want to read it out of the NASB because it makes more sense. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has appeared to me saying, I am indeed concerned about you. No. It's 15. Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, the Elohim of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is my memorial name to all generations. His memorial name is Yod He Vav He, is Yahweh. That's his name. And so the reason Yod He Vav He is here right after Haya Asher Haya, if we could read Hebrew, we would see that these two equate. That when he says Haya Asher Haya, then he turns around and says, I am Yahweh. That is him explaining what his name means. Now, why am I telling you that? The new pronunciations that people are come up with in the last 15 or 20 years do not mean I exist. They mean something else, if they mean anything at all. So how you pronounce his name matters because it has to mean self-existent one or eternal. That's what another favorite way of saying this, the eternal, because that's what his name is trying to convey. And I just bring that up because there's so much kerfuffle about the word I am, right? The New Testament is not calling every time somebody says I am, they are not claiming to be God. Okay. It's just me. Are you the Christ? He says, I am, right? He doesn't say, no, I'm not the Christ. I am, right? He says, yeah, I'm the Christ, right? So a lot of people make a lot of stuff out of the I am thing that the basis isn't there in the original language. And the other reason is because we are a sacred name group, even though we're lax, we aren't like, militant as some groups are, but this is why his name is this to all generations. I think we fall into that, right? Are we all generations, right? So we should know this stuff. Yes, Everett?
Yeah, the scripture analyzer that you brought up there for verse 14, if I read it correctly, it actually said, I will be who I will be, which I
Yes.
think is a more accurate translation because they couldn't put him in a box. Back in the ancient times, evidently they kind of felt like they had a certain amount of power over somebody if they knew his name. But he was going to be who he was going to be, and they had no power over him one way or another to put him in a box.
I'm going to piggyback on that too, because Moses has a name, says, I drew out of the water. His father, Reuel, has the name, friend of God. All these other people have names, Elizabeth, Miriam, they all have names that indicate what they're going to do or what they have done. This is a smackdown. When Moses is saying, what's your name? It is exactly what Everett just said. What word characterizes you? What he gets back is that word doesn't exist. I am eternal, I am omnipotent, omniscient. I have no beginning. I have no end. I have no flaws. I span everything. So there is no word for me. So he says, my name is Yahweh because I exist.
I was
Yes,
just
ma'am.
about to say that. I am, or I was, I am, and I am to come. So
Yeah.
past, present, future.
Yes. He invented time, which means time has no bearing on him. We don't get to put that guy in a box. Yes, Everett?
Yeah, and I think that also the fact that names are so important to them, that also uh, reinforces the fact that we really ought to be translating the names rather than transliterating the names, because when we transliterate, the name has no meaning in the English language.
Right.
But the purpose of the name was to convey meaning, so that's
So,
what we ought to do.
right. And that's Yeshua's name is salvation. We should call him salvation in English, right? That's what Yeshua means.
Yeah.
Yahweh's salvation.
Yeah.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. And either one of two things should happen. You leave the name alone or translate it, right? So leaving it alone, some things are so holy in the Bible that they don't get translated. They did that with the word Christ. They left Christ as the Greek word. Not, they should have put it the Hebrew word, right? They left Christ alone, right? And they should have called him his anointed one, right? Oh, all of a sudden that makes sense, right? Right? But the Christ, you know how many Christians believe that's his last name? They believe Jesus Christ. They believe the word Christ is his last. They don't realize that it's a title, right? So here, yeah, 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 yeah,
In church.
yeah. So yeah, you know, we're talking about Exodus 3. So I did have to beat that to death a little bit. So 17, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt and the land of the Canaanite, these guys, to a land flowing with milk and honey. Not literal. That's an idiom. It doesn't literally mean they're going to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Okay. Right. It means that there's not going to be this famine anymore. But when the land is flowing with milk, you still have to go get the milk. If the land has honey, you still have to be a beekeeper to go get the honey, right? This isn't paradise. Yeah, we get to go to the store. So, oh, Corky says something. Coming up, Moses goes to the elders, not princes or chiefs who ruled the clans, but elders who were chosen by the people. Actually, I think, Corky, that the elders are the natural progression of clan leadership. Like they're the oldest person who has shown wisdom and has led people before. But you're right in the fact that they're not princes or kings or congress people. They're a lot more connected to the people with wisdom and caring and age, and it's a different system than it's not so different from not long ago when kids used to, here in the Midwest it still happened with yes sir, yes ma'am, right, with the deference to people with age. Oh yeah. Oh well, let's go do some work. I'll be back in a minute. There's a problem I got to go attend to. Everett, you can talk to everybody.
I'm not going to be very good at that. I don't know what to say. Anybody else has anything to say, why, feel free to take over. Let's see, what do we do here? Um, I suppose the rest of the context of this is about how Moses didn't want to be part of God's program, fought it tooth and nail, but finally caved in after, God allowed that Aaron would be his spokesman. Pretty unwilling servant.
God did get mad too. God did get mad too, but he didn't do anything to Moses. He just got angry.
Yeah, he got a little upset. Yeah.
Yeah. In other incidences, he eliminated the problem. He just kind of gave Moses an option instead of taking his anger out of it.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Shortly. There's a couple guys who came for the food pantry, which is closed, so they're using the restrooms and they're going to be on their way. And then, and then, because Monday through Friday, it's on the door. It's just we just need to lock the door. So Joseph's going to lock the door. Yeah, after they leave. So what were you guys talking about? Terry was talking, so it must have been important.
Upset with Moses, but didn't take it out on her. What?
Oh yeah.
He got angry. Retaliate like he does in other incidences. He gave her another option.
Yeah. Moses talks back a lot here. You're right. Yeah. And so they will plead with the elders of Israel. So now please let us go a 3 days journey and okay. But I know they won't. I'm trying to catch back up after being policemen. But yes, okay. Just without going through it, just to catch up, and I'll get back on chapters in a second. Moses is talking back to God almost like a child to his father. Wait a minute, I can't do this. And he's like, and Yahweh's like, you think I'm telling you to do something that I'm not going to make you able to do? Right? And he goes and he keeps going until he says, fine, you can have your brother, right? Right. But he could have took him out. And what is the lesson for us though, is that even though we are stubborn, Yahweh is going to be patient with us, and he does have limitations. Later on with the golden calf incident and with other times, and there comes a point in the book of Revelation where it says, let him who sins continue in sin and let him who won't. There comes a point where he closes the door and says, we're done. Right.
The difference with Moses though is he's not idolizing something. He's not like the calf incident's a little different because they're idolizing something versus he's not really idolizing, he's just arguing with it.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I don't want to do it. I'm doing a little extra.
He's like, I can't talk. Yeah, he can't speak. And so then in 22, 18 to 22, he says, let us go a 3 days journey. It doesn't include, at no point is Yahweh including intending for them to go a 3 day journey and come back. Going So this is it's a one-way ticket. This is a total kind of deception, but every woman shall ask, and you're going to leave wealthy. So he's telling them that you're going to go and you're going to leave wealthy. Do I need to go see what that noise is upstairs again? There's nobody in the room here. Yeah.
Did Moses take his wife with him?
Yes.
Okay, because all those little shows that say that she was left behind or whatever, and I'm like, why would he not take his wife with him?
It's actually the next chapter.
But then didn't he leave her somewhere and get remarried or something?
He ends up with 2 wives, but he never leaves her.
Okay.
Yes. No, we can switch there now, but well, no, I mean, it's the next thing, right? So he goes through the back and forth about this interaction that we're talking about. And it goes with the back and forth. He's like, okay, here's some signs for you, right? And here's some signs for the people. Who are the signs really for? Are the signs for the people? No, they're the signs for Pharaoh. He's given him these powers that the, leper. I actually took a big risk with that right there. Right. But he gives him these signs with the, throw the staff on the ground, it turns into a serpent. And he says, stretch out your hand and grasp it by its tail. Okay, Moses, you'll grab a snake, but you won't go talk to Pharaoh, right? He's, oh yeah, okay, I'll touch your snake, right? But don't make me public speak, right? Right?
Yahweh had to tell him to pick up the tail, so it turned back to the staff. He ran and burned.
Yeah, he sure did. Yeah. So he gets the sign of the leper, and then he gets the sign of turning the Nile into blood, right? And so those are three pretty big signs.
Is it actual blood though? That's my other question. Because then there was this, because you know how you hear things or see movies or you see documentaries on what it could be, and it was like not the necessarily allergy, but like wasn't actual blood. It could have been, and then it talked about natural things that could have made it red, not necessarily blood from a human or an animal.
So I have seen a video, a History Channel thing, like a well-produced thing, where they go through and try to give a rational explanation to the 10 plagues, and that it's the Reed Sea and it was really shallow and all these excuses and stuff. But all that said, I do agree with you that it could be because there's some river in Florida, there's some rivers that do turn red all the time and they turn back. Also, the same thing when we talk about a blood moon, it
Not
just
blood.
means red moon, right? So, Everett, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was, and I decided not to, so I've forgotten it. Oh, the tradition in Israel.
With the goats?
No. Oh, that Moses stuttered.
Oh,
Oh,
And,
yeah.
yeah, which you've probably heard of, but I thought I'd mention it anyway for a while.
Well, it says he's slow of speech and slow of tongue. So he's kind of saying that, right?
Yeah,
But
possibly. Yeah.
yeah. And Yahweh says, yeah, but he's really mad at him here. He says, who made man's mouth? Who made him is it not I? Didn't I make you, buddy? Right? Right. Right. This is this is some hubris, hubris of hubris right here. Um, so the anger of Yahweh burned against Moses, and he said, yeah, is there not your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he speaks fluently, right? Moreover, he's coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he'll be glad in his heart. Well, Aaron's a good smooth talker, but he didn't talk himself out of making those calves. 12, Verse 19, it says, Yahweh said to Moses, go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead. Where else does that say in the Bible? Yep. Joseph, the father of Yeshua, adopted father. It says, okay, they went into Egypt, and he says, it's okay to go back. The people who are trying to kill him are dead. So there's the parallels between this and the New Testament are pretty big, Let's see, 20. Moses took his wife and his sons and mounted them on a donkey and returned to the land of Egypt. Moses took the staff of God in his hand. Yeshua goes in to Jerusalem on a donkey. There's the tradition, or the donkey for the high priest to ride a donkey. This is the genesis of that. But he took his wife. So if anybody's saying that he didn't take his wife.
something I watched where it was like I don't know if it's something I read or watched, but the wife was left behind and then she remarried and then he went back for her. I don't know. It could have been something totally different. It could be.
Yeah.
butchering this all around, but made it seem like that Moses left his wife behind to go to Egypt.
Yeah.
I don't know where it was from, but then I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is why you don't believe everything you hear.
All right. Keep talking. I'm gonna go check on that problem.
I might mention that I think it's in Jasher, but there are secular sources that indicate that Moses was a general in Egypt. And he basically conquered Ethiopia at one point in time for some reason or other. They had a dispute with Ethiopia. But he ended up marrying the Ethiopian queen's or king and queen's daughter.
Moses?
Moses did. Yeah.
Was that Jasher or something?
Well, it might have been in the book of Jasher. I don't
Some
remember.
other book?
I
I
read
don't know.
that, but there's a lot of confusion because of that, because evidently, and he was accused of marrying an Ethiopian woman, which that fits. But that may be part of the problem, is that wife we don't read about, generally speaking, here.
Yeah. Yeah, Diana and Joseph are giving the guys a couple of minutes to warm up before they have to go back out. So it seems to be under control. All right. I don't know. They might come back. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we should just start locking it, but we have people who show up at 1.
Maybe we lock it after one,
Yeah.
lock it at service times since nobody's.
Yeah. Okay.
You could lock
So-
it and give them a phone number to call to get in.
Yeah, put your number out there.
My number is on the emails. Yeah. 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 That's, I mean, that's a little creepy, but it might be necessary because we're so far away. The family did say they were coming ahead of time, but sometimes people just pop up, right? So, yeah. Anyhow, so Yahweh said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders that I have put in your power. I will harden his heart so that he will not let your people go. So there's a whole plan. The whole plan here is that he's going to be difficult and it's going to be hard for a number of reasons, right? He wanted to have cause and to destroy the Egyptian empire that he built. So he's not, so we often forget about that. The reason Egypt is the superpower was to raise up the Hebrew people. That mission's accomplished. So you're losing your wealth. You're losing your kingdom, right? So they're not going to be a big power anymore. So he's just taken back what he gave them to begin with. And he wants to destroy their gods. He wants to show the Hebrews and show the world that those gods are not real gods. There's Corky. So Corky says he agrees that Moses was a general in Egypt and did defeat the Ethiopians by attacking from inland. I never heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about that when you were gone a little bit. Yeah, sorry.
I don't know. I mean, that doesn't, they were not good at fighting for a long time. So that would have had them go back into Africa.
That was when Moses, or before Moses fled from Pharaoh.
Oh, okay. Right. Did somebody post a video of that?
I've heard that, and I think I read it. I think it was in Jasher, but I don't really remember which book it was. One of the,
Well, Jasher's the one that
Jewish
said that the Hebrews could defeat giants and they could leap over tall buildings and stuff. And
Yeah, there's some odd stuff in
yeah,
there
it's
as
not.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So,
Take it for granted.
or just move on. Yeah. Um, let my son go that he may serve me. Israel is his firstborn. This is why we're sons of God. And that includes the daughters. Okay. Just the way language works. Israel is his firstborn. Is Israel his firstborn? No. Adam's his firstborn, right? Adam or Yeshua, probably Yeshua before Adam, right? But he's talking about Israel as firstborn means that this is the way into the family of God. This is the path. So Israel's going to leave, and people are going to leave with Israel that are grafting themselves to Israel as they march across the desert. They're becoming the unnatural, the grafted in branch is literally becoming part of the natural branch. As you exist in a culture, you have to adopt that culture. A lot of times people get hired into jobs because they're looking to hire from outside, right? Because they want to hire somebody with a different culture to break the company's culture. And you have a short window to do that. Because the longer you're in that and that culture doesn't change, you become the culture. You have to do that in order to get stuff done. So in this case, he's saying he's his firstborn, his son. Israel is Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Even if we go down that list, he's the third son, right? And so it's a lot of information here, in so few words. So it came about at the lodging place on the way that Yahweh met him and sought to put him to death. Then Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and threw it at Moses' feet. And she said, "You are indeed a bridegroom of blood to me." So he let him alone. At that time, she said, "You are a bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision." What does that all mean? Right? Moses was probably circumcised, right? It looks like the boy wasn't until this moment in time. Yeah. So, yeah, 24 to 26 it's just a very strange thing. Anne Marie.
I thought Moses had two sons. I thought one was circumcised and the other wasn't. Because I've been reading up too, and it said that she had said that because the first son was circumcised, and she didn't want him to circumcise the second son because she thought it wasn't right or it was painful for her or something.
Huh.
But maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. Where does it say Moses is given signs? Burning bush, birth of Moses, flees to Midian, Reuel, their father, Egyptian delivered us, gave him, and Gershom. There's only one son here. Yeah.
I probably heard it wrong though.
Go back
Huh.
up.
Where?
Then I believe then it was probably the culture not to do that, where he was, but when they moved, the Lord, his son had to be circumcised.
Yeah, that's my note. My note is clearly Yahweh wanted that son to be circumcised.
Yeah.
Right.
And the wife, I guess, you are a bridegroom of blood because they probably didn't do that, and she thought it might be harmful or something,
Yeah.
not in their religion.
When was the law for circumcision?
Well, Abraham was commanded to circumcise on the 8th day. Now, when does the Torah, right? A couple chapters before we get to that.
Why he did it. Abraham did. Why-
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it's like nothing but questions. Everything okay upstairs? Yeah. All right.
Is he not following that because he came out of Egypt and wasn't following Hebrew ways?
Or he might not have followed it because the priest of Midian didn't do it. Right?
Plus, he wasn't taught that, right? At that point, they didn't
I don't
teach
know.
him that. Wasn't taught the Hebrew way.
All right. To the best of my knowledge, my understanding, firstborn is of spirit before it manifested as flesh. All right. That's a thought. Hmm. So the interactions you should perform. So they returned to Egypt. Moses departed, returned to Jethro, his father-in-law. It's Jethro, his father-in-law, not Reuel. Said to him, please let me go that I may return to my brethren who are in Egypt, that they may go and see if they're still alive. And Jethro said, Moses, go in peace. Yahweh said to Moses and Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead. Moses took his wife and his sons. So here you go, Amory. That's plural. So Gershom is named, but clearly there's at least one more who's not named, right? So yeah, we can look at the Exodus 4:20.
Gershon and Eleazar.
Eliezer. Why can't I count?
Uh,
Sons.
Passed authority to
Yeah.
Joshua instead of two stubborn sons. This was
Been out. It's been out. Yep, that's plural.
Chronic.
It's got cheats. Oh, it's only talking about the rod. It's not talking about, he's only talking about the rod in my cheats. So,
Is it Chronicles 15:7? 15:7?
yeah, Chronicles 4, verse 20 says wife and sons. That's from Corky, right?
Name, was it
Chronicles 4.
Oh, the sons of Gershon.
Oh, chapter 4:20 says wife and sons. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Chapter CH 4:20. Yeah. Yeah. He found that out the same time we did. So Israel's my firstborn, lodging place, circumcision. So then he finds Aaron on the road. Now, when I see this, I think about the VeggieTales episodes, right? Right. But because I'm silly. But go to meet Moses in the wilderness. So he went and met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. Moses told Aaron all the words of Yahweh, which he had sent him to do, and all the signs he commanded him to do. Then Moses and Aaron went and assembled the elders of the sons of Israel, and Aaron spoke all the words which Yahweh had spoken to Moses, and he performed the signs in front of the people. Now look at the difference here. Look at the contrast, is that Moses is kind of a doubting Thomas type figure, and Aaron is like, so you met God. All right. Tell me more. Right. Right. And they just work it out and they go and do it. There's probably more than that. But he went and performed the signs in sight of the people. So the people believed, and when they heard that Yahweh was concerned about the sons of Israel, that he had seen their affliction, they bowed low and worshiped. So that was good. They were thanking Yahweh for thinking of them. So now they get afflicted in Exodus 5. And this is the, overview type stuff, is that life's going to get worse before it gets better. And, we have these Christian doctrines, and even the second Exodus doctrines where nothing bad is going to happen to the good guys, to the believers, and everything bad is going to happen to somebody else. It's just not how it works. It's just not the case, and
Believers have been martyred.
yeah. How many believers have been martyred, she said. And I mean, what did Paul go through? What did, all the apostles go through? Stephen was stoned. When we get these thoughts in our head, people get these thoughts and they start teaching. It's a pretty easy thing to teach. Yeah. All you got to do is believe, and nothing bad's ever going to happen to you. You're going to get raptured out. But you're making yourself more important than Moses at that point, more important than Paul, more important than Messiah had to suffer as well. The idea that we aren't going to suffer in this life is It's just not there. Life has ups and downs and trials. And even Yahweh himself, sometimes he's sarcastic, sometimes he's funny, right? Yeah. When they're making fun of the idols, you say, what? And sometimes he's really mad, sometimes he's really sad. And so we have these same experiences as well. So he goes to Aaron, or goes to Pharaoh, and says, let my people go. They may celebrate a feast to me in the wilderness. Pharaoh says, who is Yahweh that I should obey his voice? I don't know this guy. Besides, I will not let Israel go. They said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days journey in the wilderness that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim. Otherwise, he will fall upon us with pestilence or with sword. But the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you draw the people away from their work? Get back to your labors. Again, Pharaoh said, look, people of the land are now many, and you would have them cease from their labors? That same day, Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters over the people and their foremen, saying, you are no longer to give the people straw to make bricks. Let them gather the straw for themselves. But the quota of bricks which they were making previously, you shall impose on them, and you are not to reduce any of it, because they are lazy, therefore they cry out. Therefore, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Let the labor be heavier on the men, and let them work at it, so they will pay no attention to these false words. Yep, give them something to do, and they won't be worried about that Yahweh fella anymore, right?
It reminds me of the Pharaoh said, who is your God that we need to listen to? It's going to be like the world who says, who's your God? We're going to do what we want, and we're going to worship our gods the way we want to worship them. And then Yahweh's going to come and say, this is who I am.
Yeah.
I am going to make you bow down.
Yeah.
It's going to be this repeat of this. I don't have to listen to your God, basically.
Yeah. And that's why we have this record. That's why we have this history. It's why these things happen, is so that we can understand they're going to happen again. Yeah. The taskmasters of the people and their foreman went out and spoke to the people. Thus says Pharaoh, I'm not going to give you any straw. You go and get the straw for yourselves wherever you could find it, but none of your labor will be reduced. So the people are scattered through all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. There ain't no straw growing in the land of Egypt today, right? I mean, it's pretty big. I guess maybe in Goshen or something, right? But so it had to have a different climate, in order for this to happen, because they had to go through all the land of Egypt to find a stubble for straw. And they said, complete your work, your daily work, just as when you had straw. But the foreman of the sons of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and asked, why have you not completed your required amount either yesterday or today? Now this is called a structured termination in modern terms. When you make somebody's job impossible to do and they can't do it, you're marching them out. It's against the law to do this in the United States. There's no straw given to your servants, yet they keep saying to us, make bricks. And behold, your servants are being beaten. It is the fault of your own people. But he said, you're lazy, very lazy. Therefore you say, let us go sacrifice to Yahweh. So go now and work, and you'll be given no straw, yet you must deliver the quota of bricks. Contrast to Yahweh's kingdom, Israel, everybody gets the Sabbath and the holy days. Everybody gets the breaks. Everybody gets to work for the season, plant, harvest, and then offer, and then enjoy the fruits of your labor. Totally different from this. This is like work, you work, you work, you work. So we can sit up here and do what we're doing, which is watching you work, right? Right? That's kind of the bad situation. The foremen of the sons of Israel saw that they were in trouble, because when they were told, you must not reduce your daily amount of bricks, when they left Pharaoh's presence, they met Moses and Aaron as they were waiting for them. And they said to them, may Yahweh look upon you and judge you, for you have made us odious in Pharaoh's sight and in the sight of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to kill us. And Moses returned to Yahweh and said, Adonai, by the way, when it says Lord like this, he's actually calling him Adonai, my Lord, right? Why have you brought harm to this people? Why did you ever send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak your name, he has done harm to your people, and you have not delivered them at all. In 6:1, and Yahweh said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for under compulsion he will let them go, and under compulsion he will drive them out of his land. So Moses had to be pushed, and Moses had to be pushed, and Moses had to be pushed. So he comes back and sasses. And if you think about it, Moses was really a strong guy to be able to deal with this, because this is just the first time. This happens over and over. He goes out in the wilderness. They're always sassing. He goes up and says, well, if you're going to kill him, kill me too. Right? And that blotting me out of the book of life. I mean, that's really, really good, strong character. And also why it says Yeshua is going to be one like Moses. Okay. Isaiah is way up here, Christopher. Isaiah 27:6. In the days to come, Jacob will take root, Israel will blossom and sprout, and they will fill the whole world with fruit. Like the striking of him who has struck them, has he struck them? Or like the slaughter of his slain, have they been slain? You contended with them by banishing them, by driving them away. With his fierce wind, he has expelled them on the day of the east wind. Therefore, through this, Jacob's iniquity will be forgiven, and this will be the full price of the pardoning of his sin, when he makes all the altar stones like pulverized chalk stones, when Asherim and incense altars will not stand. For the fortified city is isolated, a homestead forlorn and forsaken in the desert. There the calf will graze, and there it will lie down and feed its branches. By the way, book of Isaiah is about Isaiah prophesying Israel being sent into captivity because of their idolatry. So he lived before the exile, and he wrote during it. And then you have Jeremiah is during it. Then you have Ezekiel who's after it. So that's your kind of overlap. These guys all lived about the same time. They may have even like known each other, right? Because of the thing. So he's talking about how the altars are going to be turned into chalk stones. He's not talking about his altar. He's talking about the false altars are going to come down. In that day, Yahweh will start his threshing from the flowing stream of the Euphrates to the brook of Egypt, and you will be gathered up one by one, O sons of Israel. It will come about also in that day that a great trumpet will be blown, and those who were perishing in the land of Assyria, who were scattered in the land of Egypt, will come and worship before Yahweh in the holy mountain of Jerusalem. And I wish Ross was on here, because that's the verse I was talking about when it said that they're scattered in Assyria and Egypt. When they're scattered, they don't go to Europe. They go here. They go Assyria, which turns into Persia, and they go to Egypt. 28. Woe to the proud and the drunkards of Ephraim, and to the fading flower of its glorious beauty, which is at the head of the fertile valley, those who are overcome with wine. Behold, Adonai, the Lord has a strong and mighty agent, as a storm of hail, a tempest of destruction, like a storm of mighty overflowing waters. He has cast it down to the earth with his hand. Proud crown of drunkards of Ephraim is trodden underfoot, and the fading flower of its glorious beauty, which is at the head of the fertile valley, will be like the first ripe fig prior to summer, which one sees, and as soon as it is in his hand, he swallows it. He's really upset with gluttony here. Okay, that's the drunkard and stuff like that. In that day, Yahweh of hosts will become a beautiful crown and a glorious diadem to the remnant of his people, a spirit of justice for him who sits in judgment, and a strength to those who repel the onslaught at the gate. And these also reel with wine and stagger from strong drink. The priest and the prophet reel with strong drink. They are confused by wine. They stagger from strong drink. They reel from having visions. They totter when rendering judgment. The holy people are drunk and just indulging themselves. For all the tables are full of filthy vomit without a single clean place. To whom would he teach knowledge? And to whom would he interpret the message? Those just weaned from milk? Those just taken from the breast? This is talking about the situation kind of where we are today, where the people are so self-absorbed and so removed from the Bible that for us to teach them about the Bible, it's not like it was 30 years ago when people were coming out of Baptist, Methodist, Catholic. They were already believers who already had Bibles and are fixing, errors. Today, people are 2 generations removed from religion at all. And So what's the word of God going to matter to people who don't know who he is? So he says, order on order, line on line, here a little, there a little. And people stop reading at this verse. Right? Right. So people use verse 28:10 without reading the chapter and say that you're allowed to take scripture out of context in order to make a story. But if we keep reading it, because he's talking about people being drunk and gluttonous, not knowing the Bible, and he says, order on order, line on line, here a little, there a little. Indeed, he will speak to this people through stammering lips and a foreign tongue. He who said to them, here is rest, give rest to the weary, and here is repose, but they would not listen. So the word of the Lord will be to them, will be order on order, line on line, line on line, a little here, a little there, that they may go and stumble backwards, be broken, snared, and taken captive.
That's what we did in Sunday church over and over, line by line, precept studies, but it never went all the way through the things. You know?
Right. So April's saying is in Sunday church, that's what they always did, was line by line. They have the memory verses. When the kids are in the Sunday school, they have the memory verses. Okay, you don't have to keep the Torah anymore because Paul says this line. Oh, you don't have to keep the feast days anymore because Paul says that line. They don't study the entire chapter or the entire context and how the things were written. So this is an absolute condemnation against doing that. If you read scripture in bits and pieces like that, you're going to understand it like you are drunk, like you are confused. You're not going to have a full picture. It takes time, though, to go through all this context, doesn't it? It takes a lot of work, you know? Mm-hmm. Bible study. So therefore, hear the word of Yahweh, O scoffers, who rule this people who are in Jerusalem, because you have said we've made a covenant with death, and with Sheol we've made a pact. The overwhelming scourge will not reach us when it passes by. For we have made falsehood our refuge, and we have concealed ourselves with deception. I mean, this is scary stuff, right? The law is nailed to the cross crowd, right? Dead people aren't really dead. They're floating around, watching us from the heavens. So therefore, thus says Yahweh Elohim, behold, I am laying in Zion a stone, a tested stone, a costly cornerstone for the foundation firmly placed. He believes in it will not be disturbed. Wonder who that could be. And I will make justice in the measuring line, the measuring line, and righteousness the level. Then hail will sweep away the refuge of lies, and the waters will overflow the secret places. Your covenant with death will be canceled, and your pact with Sheol will not stand. When the overwhelming scourge passes through, then you will become its trampling. As often as it passes through, it will seize you. For morning after morning, it will pass through any time during the day and night. It will be sheer terror to understand what it means. The bed is too short on which to stretch out, and the blanket is too small to wrap oneself in. For Yahweh will rise up at Mount Perazim, and he will be stirred up, as in the valley in Gibeon, to do his task, his unusual task, and to do his work, his extraordinary work. Probably should stop reading at 13, where my notes said to stop, because this is unfamiliar. So then it wants me to read 29, 22, and 23. Therefore, thus says Yahweh, who redeemed Abraham concerning the house of Jacob, Jacob shall not be ashamed, nor his face now turn pale. When he sees his children, the work of my hands in his midst, they will sanctify my name. Indeed, they will sanctify the Holy One of Jacob and will stand in awe of the God of Israel. So there's coming a point where everybody's falling away. They're drunk. They don't understand scripture. It's going to be some treacherous times. Then everybody's going to understand again. Kind of blew through that. Nobody's saying anything? Mine's always too short.
You probably know more about that.
Yeah.
I got room in my bed.
Yeah. If I don't have a king size bed, my feet hang off. It's annoying. And they get cold. You tell me, right? Right. If you're just 6 feet tall, it's amazing because 5'10" is average for American men, right? Why we don't have 6 foot tall everything, right? Literalist. Yes, I am quite a literalist. So this is the contrast of when I started out about the second Exodus versus what's really going to happen, right? What's real, the second Exodus has all these connotations. It's not really a developed doctrine, but it is a way that people came up with to, there is no second Exodus if you're just tuning in, not a thing, right? It's a phrase that was come up to try to blend in Protestant prophecy into this walk, to try to merge the rapture in with some Hebrew stuff. It's kind of a amalgamation. What's actually going to happen in the regathering is Paul tells us pretty plainly, we do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep, so you will not grieve as do the rest who have no hope. For if we believe that Yeshua died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep in Yeshua. For we say this to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Messiah will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words. Yes, I am a literalist on this one. I think that the Exodus is a pattern where the people had to march out and the grafting in, and now everybody is scattered today. We're here in Kansas City. There's little groups like this all over the country. There's a couple of big groups, right? A lot of people on the internet who are everywhere. And it's my understanding that when the Messiah comes back, we're not lost. We're not going to march to Mount Sinai and hear the Torah, that we're going to be actually called to meet him up in the clouds. And then when he's assembled his people from all over the world, everybody comes down, plops down in one spot, and then, and that, by the way, is not before all the bad stuff happens. Okay. This is after the bad stuff happens, and where the people are going to be tried and famine. It's going to be hard to buy food. It already is. It's going to be hard to find water. There's going to be fires and earthquakes in various places. There's going to be wars and rumors and wars. I mean, I'm checking boxes here. I'm just saying this stuff's happening everywhere. Okay. Okay. And it's going to get bad and worse, and lives are going to get hard, and we're going to have to put our faith in Yahweh to survive. And then as we cry out, he's going to hear us. And, and when it's the right time, he's going to send his son back down here, not like he came the first time as a lamb. He's coming back as a lion with legions of angels, and that there's going to be the resurrection, and the people are going to be gathered, and it's going to be different. Yeah, the ones who survived all that. It's going to be a different thing. I mean, about the blankets. I too believe spirit will manifest on earth as in heaven. Okay. So the what's going to happen is something supernatural, things that haven't happened before. There's 7 plagues in Revelation, not 10. There's the beast power. This is a global thing. I know that I was talking with a friend online this morning about, he believes that the fleeing to the hills is literal. Well, the sentence before that should be literal too. It's those who are in Judea will flee in the hills, right? If we look at what happened in North Carolina, hills ain't safe. Okay. Okay. Right. They're not, what hill are they fleeing to? Right. So we have a global problem, a global sin problem, a global falling away problem, and we have a global solution that the Messiah is going to come back with legions of angels, and it's going to be nothing you can do about it. A reaction is either going to be one, it could be a little bit of a mix, but the two spectrums is hide in the hills. That's a Revelation verse that people are scared when it comes back, so they go hide in the cliffs, right? Which is also like what happened in the Maccabees. Or I've been looking forward to this, right? right? This is about time, right? That's the other one is when it happens, as you know, will I dance that song, Will I Dance for You, Jesus, right? Right. When that happens, we who believe that something is coming, we have a kind of a sketch of it that's going to be so big and so powerful that there's nothing we can do to stop it, right? And that it's the Messiah coming back with legions of angels in the sky, and it's going to look pretty darn Jewish or Hebrew, or yeah, some people say alien, right? It's going to look a lot more Old Testament-y than what most of Christianity believes. And so we're going to have Sabbath keeping, we're going to have an agrarian society, but just getting past that one moment in time of him coming back is what we should look forward to. So it's not, the differences are pretty stark. We know who we are. We have the Bible, right? The Hebrews who came out, they knew they didn't belong. They were saved while they were yet sinners, right? They were all ignorant of the law and they were all sinners. They were all grumbly, whatever. Saved, brought out, marched out, base of Mount Sinai, taught. We have the Bible. We have more information in these computer programs than we could ever read, right? What do we need when that happens? We need the Holy Spirit to fix what's in our brain. Because some of what's in our brain is right, maybe more right than the next guy. But some of this in our brain is not supposed to be there. And so just like Paul, who was converted on the road to Damascus and received the Holy Spirit, where the scales came off of his eyes, he was looking at the way as wrong, and he was 180 degrees wrong. He was looking at Christianity as an adversarial belief system to his that needed to be stamped out. And after he was converted, he then became the greatest evangelist of the history of mankind. And because he got straightened out by God directly.